We're live. This is my first Instagram live. Hello, Instagram. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. In essence, this is about celebrating the launch of our new flexibility program called Embodied Flexibility. And so I can stay focused on what I'd like to share. If you've got questions and all that sort of stuff, feel free to post them and I'll address them at the end. I've got lots of fun stuff to share, cool stuff. I'm going to be talking about stretching, and in my perspective, stretching is like such an amazing thing that we can do for our body. Think about it. We're going from where we are, and for a lot of people, where we are is we're not content with where we are. We have this natural desire as human beings to grow. Now, we can grow at a number of different levels. We can grow, of course, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The reason why I love stretching is because it touches upon every aspect of our being. And it challenges us with where we're at, where we're rigid, and gives us an opportunity to open, to realize more about ourselves. Not necessarily to be more, but to discover the more that we already are. So what I'm going to share with you today is a few principles that I've discovered along the way over pretty much the last 20 years about stretching the body, and also I noticed that we're stretching the mind in that process as well. So if you have a body, you will come face to face with stretching. So this is not just for those who actively do things like yoga, physical exercise. If you're bending down and picking something up, you will encounter a stretch. If you're reaching up and putting something somewhere, you will encounter a stretch. And if you have not practiced working with your body in a situation where it's stretched, then what often happens is we come against resistance and we fight that resistance. So then we're fighting the body. And this is kind of what flexibility is about in my perspective, is to come to a challenge point of resistance, and learn how to work with that. And so then on the other side of it, there is a greater space of ease. We kind of work through that challenge more gracefully. So that's kind of what we'll be covering, and why I think it's important. Of course, if you do practice more structured flexibility training and all of that sort of thing, then understanding these principles is going to be of critical importance. At the end of the day, if you are looking to improve your flexibility at a physical level, it will take some practice, and that's why I've put together a program around this, and we're going to be also having a teacher training around this as well. So without further ado, I'll go into the principles, and you can apply this to any stretch that you can think of. If you think about a lot of the ways that we approach stretching is it's often shared by people who are already flexible, who haven't been inflexible, so they lack empathy for what it is like to be tight, to be rigid, to be restricted at a physical capacity. And they say, go into this stretch, of which a lot of people can't even get into the start position. They say, hold it for 30 to 60 seconds, and then you're done. But it misses so many details where you can personalize the experience for exactly where you're at. So I've found 10 principles. There's actually more, but this is kind of me refining it. Here they are. They're inside the Embodied Flexibility course. I'm just going to randomly go through 3 today and talk a little bit about them, and let's get into it. So let's look at number 4. So principle number 4 is about refining joint position in the stretch for your unique body. So let's consider you've got a stretch. Let's say you bend forward, just as an example. So let's say you can't bend forward. Let's say you want to be able to touch the ground like this. But then you're like, I can't even get there, right? Already you're going to start in a place of compromise. If you just try and push against the body, it's like trying to force a flower to open. Like it just doesn't work that way. You're going to end up destroying the wonderful creation of nature, and also the same thing with your body. So what we need to do is find ways to be able to refine stretches for our individual needs. So let's have a look at that movement, for example. So you're bending forward and you get stuck at a point. Well, what we can do is every single joint in your body can move in different ways. So you might be tighter on one side, so you might go, okay, I'm going to bend my knees. You might then extend the hips, or like all different sorts of ways that we can move. You might then find, where we were trying to bend straight, okay, maybe we bend until, okay, here's a point where I can start to relax. And there's so many different options and variations that you could explore here. So just being able to refine the position of the joints can start to make stretches more personalized to your individual needs. As another example, let's say you want to go into like a split type position. You want to be able to open up this movement, this pathway, this area of your body. So you go and, once again, like you sit on the floor and you you can't even get to that point. So we can look at, once again, changing the position of the joints. You might even adjust this way. You could, of course, sit in an easier position, and then, okay, now I can start to relax. I can continue to refine the movement of my joints while I'm in a stretch. So that's one principle. Have a think about how you could apply that. You could apply that to any yoga posture. Any situation where you find yourself in that practice and you're in a class or you're stretching by yourself, and then you realize, I don't need to actually do the exact posture that someone has told me to do, the exact exercise. I can make micro adjustments to support my unique body. So that's something that was really useful for me when I was going through scoliosis and all of that sort of stuff, because my spine was like this. I couldn't even stand up straight. So I needed to find ways to be able to adjust and scale movements to support me being able to open up and relax. And maybe you're the same. It's been the same for now thousands of students that I've shared these principles with. So let's have a look at another principle, shall we? Let's look at building strength in your end ranges. This is principle number 6 that we share. And this is basically about, a lot of the time, it's talked about relaxation in stretching, and that's important, super important, but it's half of the equation. When it comes to moving your body, there's really 2 things that it can do. It can contract and it can relax. And there's a spectrum of that. It's like a pulse. It's not just a hard start and a hard end. There's a flow. The body's kind of always doing this. It's sort of almost a little bit like computer programming language as well, which works in ones and zeros. Either it is or it isn't. So without getting too abstract in that thought, let's consider at the end range, when you go into a stretch, what does your body do? well, the closer you get to the end of your comfort zone, the more your body tenses up. Now, often that's happening unconsciously. The nervous system is sending signals to the brain and through the spine and to the muscles to say, hey, whoa, 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 danger. So what we need to do is to actually engage with that signal in a conscious way to let the body know, to let our minds know that we are safe. And this is one really big thing. So as an example, let's say we'll go into like a split type position. I'll just go into this position. I'm just going to put down a couple of supports to help me relax and talk. All right, so I'm in this position, and now I'll go into, so my body starts to go into a stretch. It's starting to tense up. Now in this case, I can relax into that. That's definitely useful, but what I'm going to do here is engage with my nervous system to a greater degree. I'm going to create more tension. Rather than shy away and avoid the tension, create more tension. It seems counterintuitive to a lot of people, but we create tension. We build up that contraction. And in this case, I'm just pushing my leg down into the ground as I start to move forward into it. I'm contracting as I'm breathing, and my body's starting to go, okay, there is more tension than what I necessarily need here. So then as I let it off, I've got space to go a little deeper. So this is a really, really useful way. And over time, what happens is my body gets stronger at that range, so then I can move in and out of it. So then there's less risk of injury. So if we just stretch in a relaxed manner, then what we do is we don't develop the structural integrity at those end ranges. So then we can become more vulnerable to injury. And this is the case if you're one of those types of people who are a little bit more on the mobile side, then you need some more stability at those end ranges. But if you're one of those sorts of people that are on the tighter side, we need to learn how to generate contraction consciously and then consciously be able to let it off. We basically create more space rather than just, this is where I'm tense, and then we come out of it. And on you can go, and you don't move past those tension points, so it builds up, the tissue gets harder and sticks together more and more until you find yourself later on in life, you feel rigid and you've got a lot of gunk that's built up in your body. So by strengthening our end ranges, using contraction at end ranges, we do create more space for relaxation, and understanding those two things is a really, really useful principle. So just have a think about how you could apply that in any facet of your life. You could be, there could be something that you would like to do in life, a movement, even if it's just as simple as bending down and picking up an object. You can go into that situation where you find resistance, contract your body, breathe into that for a moment, 1, 2, 3 breaths is fine, and then relax off your body and notice if there's space created. You can do this in any given exercise. If you find you're at a sticking point in an exercise, in a stretch, go into it, contract and relax. Or you can add some resistance at that end range. As an example, let's say that this was a weight. I go into that range, I hold the weight, and I can change the length at which I hold it. Then my body is learning to strengthen in that range. Now, when I take that away, I've got space for the body to open up. So we're learning how to work with the body at a much deeper level than just trying to stretch, hold, and hope. And when you learn these things, stretching becomes really fun. We get to know how our body works and how we can work with it more gracefully rather than to try and push it and force it to change. I'll go through one more principle for today. I'll look at principle number 7. So this is about honouring the differences between left and right sides. So it's very common. Maybe check in with yourself. Do you feel the same on both sides of your body? I can be pretty sure for pretty much every single person, I can say that with confidence, that you will not feel the same on both sides, and there will be some people who feel a very vast difference on one side, and some people who just notice there's little bits of differences. This is because, first, your body is not a symmetrical structure. It is not perfectly balanced. The two sides of your body are not the same. You can look at your face in the mirror and you don't have the same face on both sides. Often, this is a really, really big mistake in the world of fitness and clinical rehab, as I've worked in that area for a long time, where we strive for postural balance. And it's often thought if the body is balanced, and you might see this around the internet or people talking about it, they're like, stretch this, lengthen that. And while that can be useful, often it's put with the intent to move toward this kind of structural balance perspective. However, I myself have experienced this, and I've seen like literally hundreds of people experience this, where their body is not structurally balanced, yet they experience less pain with interventions through movement and meditation. So this took me a while to be able to comprehend how is it that their body's still not perfectly balanced, but the pain has significantly reduced through working with the nervous system more effectively, through working with the body more effectively, through stabilizing the body. It's not just about every part of the body moving in the same way. What we need to do is honor the differences between left and right and work with them accordingly. And it's sort of like if you've got two kids, each of those two kids have different needs. You don't just put a blanket, this is how I parent children. Maybe there's some broader principles and morals that you'd like to share with them, but in my perspective, each kid, each person is an individual, and we get to know them as an individual, and we let their unique strengths flourish. This is the same with your body. So as you go into it, it's important to honor these differences. So let's just give an example. Let's say that I'm just seated, so I'm just going to have a look at this. Let's say this side of my hip, it feels tighter than the other side, or it has less range. Let's say one side is significantly different to the other. Let's say, I'm just, for a case of example, I can't go much deeper. Do you think that it would be useful to do the same amount of activity and the same focus on both sides? What often happens in that case is both sides might improve, but the gap stays the same. So if let's say you do the same stretch on each side and then you keep improving, this is what happens. Now, this may have a critical area, the side that is not moving as much or as freely, where there is like a very low amount of activity through certain muscles, through certain nerve signals, and all of that sort of stuff. So rather than thinking that we need to get the area to be the same, what we need to do is get more neurological activity. So it's more a factor of no activity, but a little activity extra can make an exponential difference to how that area moves overall. Because what we're looking at is habits of movement and all that sort of stuff that build up over the course of a day. So let's say in the case of the hip, there is one side that is significantly tighter, then you might find as you sit, then you bias one side as you drive the car, you bias one side as you stand, you bias one side, and that builds up and up and up and up and up. So the purpose of this is as we go into stretching, flexibility, mobility type practice, is you then have a look at those differences and we honor those differences. So it might be you go into that activity and you do just one set on the side that you feel more confident in. And then you actually do the bulk of the work on the side that you feel less connected to, less confident in, and you focus in on that. And so the purpose is to not necessarily make it the same as the other side, but to give the side that needs more love, to nurture it, to then bring it back into the whole. And that's the key thing, is that over time, we start to treat our body in such a way that it works as a whole integrated system, because no parts actually do operate by themselves. Sometimes we can kind of have that experience that, I feel disconnected from different parts of my body. So one of the bigger things here is looking at areas where you feel less connected to and bringing it back into so it works with the whole. At that point, then your body will likely start to feel a whole lot better. Discomfort, pain, tension that's like been hanging around for a long time starts to subside. And it's just a case of many hands make light work. The more kind of motor units, the more neurological signals, the more biodiversity in the way that your body is moving, then often the better it will move overall, or the better the experience of that movement. So I've covered 3 principles. So we looked at refining your joint position in the stretch for your unique body. We looked at building strength in your end ranges and honouring the differences between left and right sides. So I'm just going to have a look and see if there's some questions. And so if you've got any questions, feel free to post them. I'm happy to share some responses and share my experiences to those questions. Just had YouTube 332019, hello, and they've just quoted, "Give the side that needs more love, more love." Only Penny Ferguson could say something like that. Thank you. I like the idea that the 2 sides are 2 kids. Wonderful. Feel lucky that I'm randomly online. I'm just reading comments now. If you've got any questions, I'm just going to hang around for a moment and answer any of those questions. If not, that's okay. And just while we wait, really, you might be wondering kind of where to go from here. Well, first, apply what I've mentioned. That's a big thing. One of my big visions is that we live in a world where we're all more connected to ourselves. We're more connected to our bodies. And I really believe that the more we are connected to what's happening within us, then the more we actually get to know the nature of what it is to be alive. And the more we get to know the nature of where we come from, which in my perspective is love. And so the body is a big part of our life and the physical existence, and you've only got one. And so that's a big thing for me, is to be able to share the love for the body around the world. I've got a question here. I play soccer from Leesum7. My every injury gets healed with time, and I'm an athlete which takes excellent care of myself, but after my ankle injury, I'm imagining that you feel not good. So in the case of an injury, just at a very basic level, I would look at it as an opportunity. Injuries are opportunities to look at areas that are not working together with the whole system. Let's say, like the body is like a big chain, and then the chain breaks at a point. Well, we look at that weak link and how that relates to the whole system. So first of all, what you might like to do is just get to know the area a little bit more. If it's in its acute phase, then you might need to give it some time to heal. But then over time, get to know it. It's, for an example, I injured my elbow in a bit of an accident a couple of months ago. And it's such a beautiful journey. It let me get to know not just my elbow, but it let me get to know my shoulder, it let me get to know my wrist and my hand, let me get to know my spine and how that all works together. So if we find a gentle starting point and then gradually build up from there, then that can be useful. And really happy after you explore that LESM 7, if you reach back out, share what you're doing, and we're happy to give some further considerations. Nadia mentioned cool technique with the contraction in the stretch. Do you contract the whole body? That's a good question. Yes, we can, and no, we don't have to necessarily. So what I mean here is, this is a bit of a paradox where we're talking about the integration of the whole body. We often think about everything as one. Well, of course, everything is one. And sometimes to get to that point, we also need to learn how to isolate different parts in context of it being part of a whole system. So what you can do is you could contract individual areas or work on contracting those individual areas. Like I said before, in that particular stretch, like you could push down into the ground, or you could just like practice contracting the muscles in general. You can then also experiment with more full body contraction. One thing that I find important to consider is the overflow of unconscious contraction. So let's say you go into a stretch and then you go to contract one area, it's a lower body stretch as an example, and then you tense up your jaw, and then that just exacerbates a habit that's already there. What is useful to also kind of develop some conscious control of these different ways of contracting. So both are useful to your question, Nadia, and I would suggest start small at the area that you're focusing on, and then gradually involve more of the body, and then just experiment, explore. Like that's one of the key things, is get to know your unique body, and intellectual understanding is just part of the puzzle. Feeling is really understanding here. So I hope that helps, and keep on exploring. I know you're inside the Embody Flexibility Program, so keep on reaching out, sharing your practice, and we're happy to give some more considerations. Caitlin's just mentioned, could you share how you're breathing while you stretch? All right, I will go into a bonus principle in this case. So principle number 3 is relax into stretching with your breath. Now, there's lots, we could probably do a whole video on this topic in and of itself. A very simple way to look at it is first become aware of your breathing. If you're holding your breath, then that is going to block every physiological function in your body. If you just think about your breathing, think about the world record of how long someone has lived without breathing. I don't know what it is, maybe 13 minutes, it might be less, but like that would be a massive outlier to the average person. You can live a lot longer without food, without water, a little less breathing. You start to see how important it is. So first, become aware of your breathing and just let it happen naturally without trying to contrive it or do anything. This is a real mistake that people make, is they try and do all these different breathing techniques before they're just aware of their breathing. So if you could do that one thing as you're stretching, so you go into a stretch and then you notice your breath as you go deeper and deeper. If you start to tense your breath, back off the range a little bit, come to a point where you can just breathe. And then from there, you can become aware of your habits of breathing. From that point, what I'd focus on is the length of your exhale. So often when you're stretching or you go into an uncomfortable place with your body, we can encounter these kind of oh shit experiences. So where it's like, oh shit, oh God, everything's happening. So like if you get to your oh shit moment, let the oh shit moment happen. And then with the intent to then just slow down the exhale. The exhale is like the breath of relaxation. It's a really big way to induce a relaxation response in the nervous system in the experience that you're going into. So slow down the exhale as best as you can and notice what happens. You might notice that a lot of those physiological warnings, those mental warnings, they start to diminish, and then we can experience there's less of a threat, which creates more open space for range of movement, for flexibility and ease in the body. So that's some considerations to start with breathing and stretching, and just you could apply that to life as well if you chose. There's a couple more questions that when it rains it pours, eh? Awesome. I'm glad that helps, Nadia. Awesome. Yep. Yeah, you can watch this replay. We'll be posting it. So if you've missed anything, you can watch things. Fred has asked the question, when I practice bowing horse stance stretch, if I do 2 or 3 sets, even though I'm careful not to go over about 70% of my max, my hips are pretty sore the next day. Is this normal? There is no, first I will say there is no normal. There is just you experiencing your body. So if you are getting that experience, that effect from that stimulus, what I would say is soreness is okay, but I find we actually don't want to induce too much soreness when we're stretching. So if that is happening, then it's useful to make the movement easier. So Fred, I'm aware that you're inside the Embodied Flexibility Program. So what you might like to do is have a look at some of the easier progressions in that particular stretch. There's a seated variation, and I would keep doing that until you can have sessions where you don't feel sore after. That's then the body saying that it's not breaking down too much. Basically, soreness is the body saying, hey, I need to rebuild. And often when we have soreness, we reduce our range of movement, and then we can also build up scar tissue if we repeatedly kind of put trauma into that area. So this is not to induce fear or anything like that. Soreness happens, but if we do it all the time, it's a sign that we're always kind of giving the body quite a bit of intensity. And so then it's always putting so much energy into recovery. So what I recommend is to just explore this kind of softer space for a little while, get your body accustomed to that particular movement, and then gradually build up your intensity over time. Then what you find is that in your day-to-day, you're moving more easily, more freely. You use your stretching practice to prime your nervous system, and then you aren't kind of moving around like, oh, I'm tight and sore, and then kind of doing this. It's a really nice, much smoother journey. When you start to get more accustomed, you can start to play with intensity a little bit more. And one of the key things when we're practicing flexibility, particularly in the beginning, this was the case for me, I've observed so many people who are doing this, is what we're coming up against is our own resistance. So if we meet our own resistance with intensity, it's like trying to drive your car with the handbrake on. I've done that before. I don't know whether anyone else can relate. And it's just, you use more energy than what you need. So what we first need to do is learn how to take the handbrake off, take our own inner resistance off, and that's mental resistance to the experience, trying to fight the discomfort. That's also hypersensitive physiological reactions where we get in this hyperreactive state of like, oh, I'm going to injure myself. So we need to learn how to take those off so then we can experience more what is. At that point, your body naturally is a lot more resilient and respondent to more intensity. So we've got to kind of go into these experiences, learn to relax the mind and the body in the experience, take off that handbrake, and then we're not pushing against our own self-created resistance. We then start to then work with the physical body to a deeper level. So it's kind of less about two forces pushing against each other, more than like you plant a seed, you let that grow, and then the body starts to flourish a little bit more like that, rather than just force against force all the time. So I hope that makes sense and is useful. There's a lot of opportunities to apply that. And thanks for that question, Fred. Keep on keeping on. All right, well, I think that's all the questions I can see for today. I'm trusting that it's useful. If you'd like to know more about the Embodied Flexibility Program, you can head over to the Movement Monk website and check it out. It's something that I'm really stoked about sharing. Myself and the team have put a lot of time and work into it. This is based upon a course that I created called Embodied Flexibility, the first version. That was released almost 10 years ago. We've had 2,500 people go through that. And so it's become a culmination of not just my own 20 years of experiences of meditative and movement practices, but now feedback from so many people who have gone through the course. So we've listened, we've adapted, and we've made something that I feel can really contribute to people feeling better in their bodies, in the world. That's something that I'd love to share more of. I'd love to meet more and more people who just feel free in their bodies, give them a high five, become those old people at the playground, playing with the kids and aging more gracefully. So that's what Embodied Flexibility is all about. And if you're a coach or a teacher, a yoga practitioner, and you're looking to share a more adaptive approach to flexibility rather than like a one-size-fits-all, you like to do that more confidently, you'd like to do that more online as well to have that possibility, then we've got some really cool stuff coming where we'll be sharing a teacher training around this coming up soon. So for those of you who watched today, thanks for joining me. Thank you so much. I don't think there's anyone else in the world like Benny. Well, there is just one me, and there's just one of everyone. I think I keep getting inspired to just share what I feel passionate about, my experiences, and I would love to live in a world where we could all do that and help each other. I've learned that life's better shared. So thank you. It warms my heart to hear that. So if you're watching the replay, I hope you enjoy. Thanks for joining me live. It's my first live. I'd like to do more of these. And I hope you have a lovely day wherever you are in the world amidst what's happening in the world at the moment. I know it's tough for a lot of people. It's heartbreaking. But what we're going through is a rapid shift in consciousness in my perspective, and I feel that connecting with our bodies, connecting with ourselves is a big part of that shift, so then we can really come from a place of strength and centeredness. So I'm right beside you in that journey, and let's all move forward together and love our human family. So take care, speak soon, peace.